Most people think American cities look the way they do by accident, that they simply grew this way over time. But the truth is, almost nothing about American cities is accidental. From wide roads, empty downtowns, endless parking lots, to cities built for cars instead of people. This video is part of our series on why American cities look the way they do. And once you understand the system behind it, you'll never see American cities the same way again.
America has some of the largest cities on Earth. Massive highways, endless suburbs, downtown skylines that stretch for miles. And yet, many of these places feel strangely empty. Not abandoned, not failed, just quiet, spread out, distant. In this film, we're not asking why American cities are big. We're asking something more uncomfortable. Why do so many of them feel empty, even when millions of people live there? The answer isn't decay, it's design.
The illusion of emptiness. How American cities learn to look quiet without being empty. American cities often feel empty, but that feeling is deceptive. They are not empty in population. They are not empty in economic activity. They are not empty in infrastructure investment. What feels empty is presence. To understand this, we have to abandon the idea that cities are defined by how many people live in them. Cities are defined by how people appear within space. In many American cities, people exist, but they are hidden. They are indoors. They are in cars. They are separated by design. The emptiness you feel is not absence. It is distance made normal. This is the foundation of American urbanism. Emptiness is a visual experience, not a demographic one. When people describe a city as empty, they are rarely talking about statistics. They are describing a sensation. Wide streets with few pedestrians, large buildings surrounded by nothing, downtowns that feel inactive outside of office hours. This sensation is visual, spatial, and psychological. A city can have millions of residents and still feel quiet if its design minimizes human-scale interaction. American cities mastered this paradox. They did not remove people, they removed visibility. In contrast, older cities evolved under very different constraints. In medieval European cities or pre-industrial Asian cities, density was unavoidable. Walls limited expansion, walking limited distance, commerce required proximity. Life had to overlap. In American cities, overlap became optional. The New World did not inherit cities, it invented them. Most civilizations inherited their urban form. America did not. The United States emerged during a moment when land felt infinite, technology was accelerating, and tradition carried less weight than opportunity. Cities were not something to preserve, they were something to optimize. From the beginning, American urban development was shaped by three assumptions. Land is abundant, movement should be fast, separation creates order. These assumptions quietly shaped every decision that followed. When cities expanded, they expanded outward. When congestion appeared, roads widened. When conflict arose, functions were separated. This did not produce chaos, it produced calm. But calm has a side effect. Calm looks empty. Distance as a cultural asset. In many cultures, proximity is associated with energy, opportunity, and social life. In American culture, distance often signals success. A larger house, a longer driveway, a quieter street. Space became aspirational. This cultural preference cannot be separated from urban form. Design followed desire. People did not demand crowded streets. They demanded comfort, safety, and control. Developers responded accordingly. Cities stopped performing life publicly and began storing it privately. Why streets became so wide? One of the first things visitors notice in American cities is the width of the streets. These streets were not built for pedestrians. They were built for throughput. As the automobile rose to dominance, streets transformed from social spaces into movement corridors. Wider lanes made higher speeds. Higher speeds meant fewer interruptions. Fewer interruptions meant fewer reasons to stop. The street lost its role as a place. In older cities, streets are destinations. In American cities, streets are transitions. This single shift explains much of the perceived emptiness. If people are always passing through, they are never present. Sidewalks without life. Even when sidewalks exist, they often feel underused. This is not because Americans dislike walking. It is because walking rarely leads anywhere useful. Zoning separated destinations. Parking absorbed frontage. Buildings retreated behind setbacks. A sidewalk without interaction becomes symbolic infrastructure, present but inactive. Life requires friction. American design minimized it. The invisible density problem. Density exists in American cities, but it is hidden vertically and horizontally. Apartment towers may house thousands, but their ground floors are sealed. Office districts empty at night. Residential zones isolate daily life behind private doors. The result is density without spectacle. People live there, but you don't see them.
This creates the impression of emptiness even during peak usage. Parking is negative space. Parking is one of the most powerful yet invisible forces shaping American cities. Parking does not add activity, it subtracts possibility. Each parking lot replaces what could have been housing, retail, or public space, but parking is necessary within the system America built. Cars require storage, storage requires land, land consumes proximity. As parking expanded, cities stretched. Stretched cities feel quieter, not because they are inactive, but because everything is farther apart than the human eye expects.
American cities are designed to be observed from a car. This may be the most important idea in understanding urban emptiness. American cities are not meant to be experienced at walking speed. They are designed to be read at 30 to 60 miles per hour. At that speed, buildings become background, people become irrelevant, space becomes dominant. When you slow down, the city feels incomplete. That incompleteness is not failure, it is a mismatch of scale. Why downtowns feel quiet? Downtowns in American cities often concentrate economic power without concentrating daily life. Offices dominate, retail adapts to commuters, housing becomes secondary. When work ends, the city pauses. This creates a cycle of intensity and silence that reinforces the perception of emptiness. In older cities, downtowns never sleep because functions overlap. In American cities, functions take turns. Emptiness as a planned outcome. This is the most difficult idea to accept. American cities feel empty not because something went wrong, but because the system worked. The goals were reduce congestion, increase efficiency, maximize comfort, protect property values. Human density was never the priority. Visibility was optional. Emptiness became the visual cost of order. The psychological effect of scale. Large-scale design alters perception. When buildings are spaced far apart, people feel smaller. When streets are oversized, movement feels insignificant. When blocks stretch endlessly, destinations feel distant. This scale mismatch creates emotional quiet. The city stops speaking. Comparing emptiness across cultures. A street considered empty in New York might be considered normal in Los Angeles. A street considered empty in Los Angeles might feel overwhelming in a small European town. Emptiness is relative. American cities recalibrated the baseline. What once felt vacant became acceptable. What once felt lively became crowded. Over time, expectations shifted. The city as infrastructure, not theater. In many civilizations, cities function as stages for social life. In America, cities function as systems. They move goods, they move labor, they move capital. They do not prioritize spectacle. When cities stop performing, observers interpret silence as absence, but silence can be intentional. Why this matters now? The feeling of emptiness is not neutral. It affects social trust, economic interaction, civic identity. Cities that feel empty struggle to feel shared. As demographics change and lifestyles evolve, this design philosophy is being questioned. But before change is possible, understanding is required. American cities feel empty because they were built to, not accidentally, not mistakenly, but deliberately. Emptiness is not decay, it is memory. It is the physical record of choices made decades ago, choices that value distance, efficiency, and control. To understand American cities, we must stop asking why they feel empty and start asking why emptiness felt right.
A nation designed for distance. How geography, technology, and ideology stretched the American city. To understand why American cities feel empty, we have to move backward, not just in time, but in mindset. The United States was never designed to be compact. It was designed to expand. From the very beginning, American urban form was shaped by a belief that most civilizations never had the luxury to entertain. Space would never run out. This belief changed everything. Geography as destiny. Geography is not just land, it is possibility. The continental United States offered vast continuous territory, unlike the fragmented geographies of Europe or the dense river civilizations of Asia. There were no ancient walls to respect, no inherited street grids to obey, no historical cores that demanded preservation. Cities could move, cities could spread, cities could start over, and they often did. This geographic freedom produced a unique urban psychology. Distance was not a problem to solve, it was an asset to use. Expansion as a moral idea. In many societies, expansion is a threat. In American history, expansion became a virtue. The frontier was not just a place, it was an ideology.
Expansion meant opportunity. Expansion meant progress. Expansion meant freedom. This frontier mentality did not disappear when the frontier closed. It migrated into cities. Urban expansion became suburban expansion. Suburban expansion became metropolitan sprawl. The city was no longer something to contain. It was something to extend indefinitely. Transportation came first, not density. Most historical cities grew around walking. American cities grew around movement technology. First came canals, then railroads, then streetcars, then automobiles. Each new system extended the acceptable distance between home, work, and daily life. Instead of densifying, cities elongated. Rail lines pulled cities outward along corridors. Streetcars created early suburbs. Cars dissolved distance entirely. Density became optional. The railroad city and the birth of separation. Early American cities already hinted at future emptiness. Railroads demanded space. Stations became nodes rather than centers. Industrial zones pushed outward. Already functions were separating. Factories did not want housing nearby. Housing did not want industry nearby. Commerce adjusted to flows, not proximity. This logic would later be formalized, but its roots were early. The automobile was not an accident. The automobile did not conquer American cities by force. It was welcomed. Cars aligned perfectly with American values: independence, privacy, personal control. They allowed individuals to bypass shared space. You no longer needed a lively street. You needed a reliable road. Cities adapted quickly. Streets widened, blocks lengthened, intersections simplified. Pedestrians became secondary users in their own cities. Distance became invisible. One of the most important effects of automotive dominance is psychological. Cars compress perception of distance. What feels far on foot feels trivial behind a windshield. 10 minutes of driving replaces 10 minutes of walking, but the spatial footprint is exponentially larger. Cities expanded without feeling larger to their residents. This created metropolitan regions that look empty from the outside, but feel normal from within. Infrastructure before urban life. American cities prioritized infrastructure over atmosphere. Highways were built before neighborhoods matured. Road capacity was increased before street life emerged. This reversed historical sequence. In older cities, life came first, infrastructure adapted later. In America, infrastructure defined where life could exist. When infrastructure dominates, human presence recedes. The grid that encouraged spread. The American grid system is often praised for its efficiency, but efficiency has consequences. The grid allows endless extension without hierarchy. There is no natural center, no built-in limit, no spatial climax. Cities can sprawl endlessly without changing character. This makes cities legible, but emotionally flat. Flat cities feel empty. Cheap land changed the equation. Land scarcity forces density. America rarely faced land scarcity. Cheap land made it rational to build outward instead of upward. Why stack people when you can separate them? Why compress functions when you can isolate them? The economic logic of cheap land reinforced cultural preferences for space. Density became something to avoid, not celebrate. Housing as a distance machine. American housing is not just shelter, it is spatial ideology. Single-family homes dominate not because they are efficient, but because they align with the desire for separation. Yards create buffers, garages remove interaction, setbacks enforce distance. Neighborhoods became collections of private worlds rather than shared environments.
This produces comfort, but drains public life. Suburbs as a new urban form. Suburbs were not failures of cities. They were intentional alternatives. They promised safety, predictability, separation from chaos. They succeeded. But they did so by redistributing urban life across enormous areas. The result is a city that functions, but does not gather. The silent trade-off. Every planning decision is a trade. America traded intensity for efficiency, presence for privacy, overlap for order. This trade created cities that operate smoothly but feel emotionally distant. The emptiness is not accidental. It is the visible cost of a chosen system. Why distance felt rational? From a mid-20th century perspective, distance solved problems. Crowding caused disease, density caused noise, mixed use caused conflict. Separation seemed logical. The long-term emotional effects were not part of the calculation. Cities were treated as machines, not ecosystems. The metropolitan scale problem. As cities expanded, they crossed a critical threshold. They became too large to feel coherent. No single street could represent the whole. No center could hold collective identity. People began identifying with neighborhoods, not cities. The city became abstract. Abstract cities feel empty. Why American cities look bigger than they feel? American cities often appear massive from aerial views. From the ground, they feel fragmented. This disconnect is central to the emptiness sensation. Scale exists, but not concentration. The city is everywhere and nowhere at once.
cultural reinforcement over time. Once distance became normal, expectations adjusted. Wide streets felt safe, quiet blocks felt desirable, empty space felt premium. Design reinforced culture, culture reinforced design. This feedback loop hardened into norm. The cost of endless expansion. Endless expansion dilutes meaning. When everything spreads, nothing anchors. Centers weaken, edges blur, public life thins. The city becomes background. Why this still shapes cities today? Even as preferences shift toward walkability and density, the underlying structure remains. Highways still dominate, zoning still separates, distances still exist. You can add cafes and bike lanes, but the spatial DNA persists. Emptiness is baked into the system.
Zoning the city apart. How rules, not architecture, emptied American streets. When people talk about architecture, they usually imagine buildings. But the most powerful force shaping American cities is not a building at all. It is a document. Zoning. Zoning does not create beauty. It does not inspire emotion. It does not appear on postcards. Yet zoning determines whether a street feels alive or silent. More than highways, more than cars, more than suburbs, zoning quietly taught American cities how to separate life from itself. Cities before zoning were messy by design. Before zoning laws existed, cities were chaotic. Homes sat about shops. Workshops shared walls with apartments. Children played near businesses. Noise, smell, and life overlapped constantly. This overlap was not aesthetic. It was practical. Walking limited distance. Time limited travel. Life had to be close. Density was not a preference. It was a requirement. And because everything mixed, streets stayed active throughout the day. The fear that changed everything. Zoning did not emerge from architectural ambition. It emerged from fear. Fear of fire, fear of disease, fear of noise, fear of declining property values. Industrialization intensified these fears. Factories produced smoke. Tenements crowded workers. Immigrants concentrated in dense neighborhoods. The response was not better designed. It was separation. Cities began dividing themselves into zones, each with a single purpose. The legal birth of separation. In the early 20th century, zoning became law. Local governments gained the power to dictate what could exist where. Housing, industry, commerce. This was framed as progress. Order replaced chaos. Predictability replaced uncertainty. But something subtle happened. Cities stopped being ecosystems and became spreadsheets. Single-use zoning and the death of overlap. Single-use zoning is simple to understand. One area for living, one area for working, one area for shopping. Simple rules, clear boundaries. But cities do not thrive on clarity. They thrive on overlap. When uses are separated, life fragments. People no longer move organically through space. They commute. Commuting is efficient, but it empties streets between destinations. Why streets lost their rhythm. In mixed-use cities, streets have rhythm. Morning deliveries, midday commerce, evening leisure, nighttime activity. Each use overlaps slightly with the next. Zone cities lack this rhythm. Office districts peak briefly. Residential areas sleep during the day. Commercial strips depend on parking turnover. Between these peaks, silence dominates. Zoning and the rise of the empty downtown. American downtowns did not become empty because people left cities. They became empty because zoning removed reasons to stay. When housing is restricted, downtowns depend on commuters. When offices close, activity collapses. A downtown without residents is not a neighborhood. It is a schedule. Schedules create gaps. Gaps feel empty. Residential zoning and the illusion of safety. Single-family zoning was justified as protection. Protection from congestion, protection from noise, protection from change. But protection requires buffers. Buffers create distance.
Distance reduces interaction. Neighborhoods became quieter, but also socially thinner. People retreated indoors. Public space became optional. The setback problem. Zoning introduced setbacks, mandatory distance between buildings in the street. This small rule had massive consequences. Buildings stepped back, front doors moved away, eyes left the street. Without doors and windows engaging the sidewalk, streets lost intimacy. They became corridors instead of places. Height limits and horizontal spread. Zoning often limited height more aggressively than footprint. This encouraged horizontal expansion. Instead of stacking people, cities spread them out. Lower height, wider area. Density declined visually, even when population grew. Commercial zoning and the strip mall effect. Commercial zones evolved into strips. Retail pulled away from streets and attached to parking. Storefronts turned inward. Street life turned off. The city became something you accessed, not something you inhabited. Why zoning feels neutral, but isn't? Zoning presents itself as technical. Charts, maps, codes. But it encodes values. It decides who lives near whom, what activities are visible, where life is allowed to happen. Zoning shapes experience more than architecture ever could. Social consequences of separation. When uses separate, so do people. Income separates, race separates, lifestyle separates. This was not accidental. Zoning became a legal tool to maintain social distance without explicit language. The emptiness of streets often reflects the emptiness of shared experience. The missing middle problem. Zoning eliminated moderate density.
Duplexes, courtyard apartments, small mixed-use buildings. What remained were extremes: single-family homes, large apartment blocks. The gentle density that sustained street life disappeared. Why walking became inconvenient. Zoning increased distances between destinations: home to store, store to school, school to work. Walking became impractical. Cars became necessary. Once cars dominate, streets lose pedestrians. Without pedestrians, cities feel empty. Zoning and time-based cities. Zoned cities operate on schedules: morning traffic surge, midday lull, evening congestion, nighttime silence. Life happens in bursts. Between bursts, emptiness expands. Why zoning is hard to undo. Zoning shapes infrastructure investment: roads, utilities, parking. Once built, reversal is expensive. Even when zoning relaxes, form remains. The emptiness persists. Cities that resisted zoning. Some American cities resisted strict separation longer than others. They retained mixed-use cores. These areas feel different: more noise, more activity, more unpredictability. They also feel more alive. The psychological effect of predictability. Zoning promised certainty. Certainty reduces stress, but also surprise. Cities without surprise feel static. Static environments feel empty. Why zoning made cities look bigger. By separating uses, zoning increased travel distance. This stretched cities spatially. From above, cities appear massive. On the ground, they feel disconnected. Disconnected cities feel hollow. The quiet authority of rules. Zoning does not shout. It whispers. But it whispers continuously, shaping every block, every street, every absence. American cities did not empty themselves through neglect. They empty themselves through regulation. The parking lot civilization. How cars replaced people as the primary occupants of American space. If zoning separated American cities conceptually, parking separated them physically. No other urban element consumes more land while contributing less life. Parking does not gather people, it stores machines. Yet in American cities, parking became the dominant land use. This single fact explains why so many places feel empty even when they are fully functional. Parking is the space you don't notice. Parking rarely attracts attention. It is not historic. It is not beautiful. It is not controversial in everyday conversation. But parking quietly occupies more urban land than housing, offices, or parks in many American cities. Entire districts exist primarily to hold cars that are unused most of the time.
This changes how cities feel at every scale. Why cars demanded so much space? Cars are inefficient objects. They are large, they require clearance, they require access lanes, they require safety buffers. And most critically, they remain stationary far longer than they move. Every car demands multiple parking spaces across a single day: home, work, shopping, entertainment. Multiply that demand by millions. The city becomes storage. Parking as invisible zoning. Even when zoning allows mixed use, parking requirements quietly undo it. Minimum parking mandates require developers to provide a fixed number of spaces per building. This creates consequences. Buildings shrink, distances expand, street frontage disappears. Parking becomes the dominant design driver. Life adapts around storage. The parking lot as anti-space. A parking lot is not neutral. It actively removes possibility. It creates gaps too wide to cross comfortably. It removes doors from streets. It discourages lingering. Where a building invites, a parking lot repels. Cities with large amounts of parking feel perforated, full of holes where life could have existed. How downtowns were hollowed out. Downtown parking was introduced to support commuters. Office workers arrived by car. They needed somewhere to leave it. Rather than limit cars, cities sacrificed land. Buildings were demolished to make room for parking. This reduced density at the very moment downtowns needed it most. The result was a paradox. More access created less life. Structured parking and vertical emptiness. Parking garages attempted to solve the land problem by stacking cars, but garages create dead zones at street level. Blank walls, few entrances, no interaction. Even when density returns above, the street remains lifeless. Parking and the death of the corner. Corners are historically the most valuable urban spaces. They attract movement, they anchor commerce. Parking destroys corners. It replaces active edges with voids. A city without active corners feels disoriented and empty. The psychological effect of surface parking. Large open lots disrupt scale. They make buildings feel isolated. They increase walking distance. They expose people to weather and traffic. This discourages casual movement. People choose to drive even short distances. Pedestrians vanish. Why parking encourage sprawl? Parking requirements increase land costs per building. This makes dense development expensive. Developers move outward where land is cheaper. Sprawl accelerates. As cities spread, distances grow. Emptiness expands. The feedback loop of car dependence. Parking enables driving. Driving increases demand for parking. This feedback loop reinforces itself. Each new parking lot justifies the next one. Cities become optimized for vehicles rather than people. Streets became access roads, not places. Once parking dominates, streets lose their original role. They are no longer social spaces. They become access channels between storage locations. Life moves from building to car to building. The street is bypassed. Parking and temporal emptiness. Parking creates time-based emptiness. Office parking lots fill during the day and empty at night. Retail parking peaks briefly and then empties. At any given moment, large portions of the city are vacant. This constant fluctuation creates visual silence. Why parking feels necessary? Parking feels inevitable because the system demands it. Zoning separates destinations. Distances increase. Cars become mandatory. Parking is not a cause alone, it is a symptom of deeper choices. But once present, it reshapes everything around it. City seen from above versus below. From aerial views, parking dominates. From ground level, it fragments experience. What looks efficient on a map feels empty on foot. This disconnect defines much of American urbanism. Why removing parking is politically difficult. Parking represents convenience. Convenience feels like a right. Removing parking is perceived as taking something away, even if it improves urban life. This political reality locks emptiness in place.
Parking as cultural expression. Parking reflects values: speed over presence, access over encounter, convenience over community. These values shaped cities unconsciously. The result is an environment optimized for movement, not gathering. The cost to public life. Where parking dominates, public life recedes. Spontaneous encounters decline. Street commerce weakens. Civic identity thins. Cities become places you pass through, not belong to. Why parking made cities look empty even at peak use? A fully parked city looks empty. Cars do not signal life. People do. When cars replace people visually, cities appear vacant regardless of activity level. The long-term lock-in effect. Once parking occupies land, redevelopment becomes expensive. Utilities are rerouted, ownership fragments, political resistance grows. The emptiness hardens. Parking and the loss of urban memory. Buildings carry memory. Parking erases it. When cities replace structures with lots, they erase stories, rhythms, and landmarks. What remains feels temporary and unfinished. Why this matters for the future. As cities attempt to become more walkable, parking stands in the way. It consumes land needed for housing. It blocks continuity. It maintains distance. Until parking is addressed, emptiness persists.
Highways as urban borders. How roads meant to connect cities ended up dividing them. Highways are often described as the arteries of American cities. They move people, they move goods, they move capital. But inside cities, highways do something else entirely. They divide. They separate neighborhoods, interrupt continuity, and create physical and psychological borders that reshape how cities are experienced. More than any other infrastructure, highways taught American cities how to feel empty, even while functioning at full capacity. The promise of connection. When urban highways were first proposed, they were framed as solutions. Solutions to congestion, solutions to economic inefficiency, solutions to aging infrastructure. They promised speed and access. Cities were told they would become more connected. What they did not anticipate was what connection at high speed would cost at human scale. Speed requires space. High-speed movement demands wide corridors, multiple lanes, large interchanges, long sight lines, safety buffers. This space had to come from somewhere. In cities, it came from neighborhoods. Entire blocks were cleared to make room for roads that no one would walk on. The destruction of continuity. Cities rely on continuity. Short blocks, frequent intersections, gradual transitions. Highways interrupt all of it. They create gaps too large to cross comfortably. They sever street grids. They isolate districts. What once felt like a continuous city becomes a series of disconnected islands. Highways as physical barriers. For pedestrians, highways are walls. Bridges and underpasses exist, but they are rarely inviting. Noise, speed, scale. Crossing a highway feels hostile. People avoid it. This avoidance shrinks the perceived size of neighborhoods. Psychological borders matter more than physical ones. Even when crossings exist, highways create mental boundaries. Residents stop identifying with areas on the other side. Businesses lose cross-traffic. Social networks weaken. The city fragments not just physically, but socially. Fragmented cities feel empty. Who paid the price? Highways did not cut through cities evenly. They often targeted working-class neighborhoods, minority communities, politically vulnerable areas. These areas were deemed expendable. The result was not just displacement, but long-term disinvestment. Vacant land followed. Emptiness became structural. The buffer zone effect. Highways generate negative externalities: noise, pollution, vibration. To manage these, cities created buffer zones. Industrial land, parking, vacant space. These buffers further drained life from surrounding areas. Why highways attract emptiness? Highways discourage walking and lingering. Businesses avoid fronting them. Housing turns inward. Public spaces retreat. What remains is infrastructure without urban life. Downtown highways in the hollow core. Many American downtowns are encircled by highways. These loops were designed to move traffic efficiently. They also isolated downtowns from surrounding neighborhoods. Downtowns became destinations, not places to live. When activity ends, emptiness follows. The false neutrality of infrastructure. Highways are often treated as neutral. But infrastructure is never neutral. It shapes behavior. It privileges speed over presence. When speed dominates, public life recedes. Highways and a scaling problem. Highways operate at regional scale. Cities operate at human scale. When regional infrastructure cuts through human environments, scale conflict occurs. The larger system overwhelms the smaller one. The city feels drowned by its own mobility. Visual emptiness along highway edges. Highway edges are visually dead. Blank walls, sound barriers, vacant space. These zones dominate urban vistas. They broadcast absence. Why highways locked in car dependence? Once highways were built, alternatives weakened. Transit lost riders. Walking became unsafe. Density declined. The system reinforced itself. More driving justified more highways. More highways produce more emptiness. Attempts to repair the damage. Some cities have removed highways. Where they do, life returns. Streets reconnect. Density rises. Public space reappears.
This proved the emptiness was not inevitable, it was engineered. Why removal is rare? Highways carry political weight. They serve commuters. They serve commerce. They serve regional interests. Urban life is local. Local interests often lose. Highways has lines of power. Who controls mobility controls development. Highways shifted power outward. Suburbs gained access. Cities lost coherence. Emptiness spread. The aesthetic of infrastructure. Highways are visually dominant. They reshape skylines. They frame views. When infrastructure dominates the visual field, people disappear. The city feels mechanical. Noise is social repellent.
Noise discourages conversation, leisure, and outdoor life. Highway noise pushes people indoors. The street empties. The temporal divide. Highways concentrate movement into peak hours. Outside those times, adjacent areas feel abandoned. Time-based emptiness becomes permanent in perception. The long shadow of mid-century planning. Most highways were built decades ago. Their effects persist. Even where cities grow, the scars remain. Emptiness outlives policy. Highways as anti-urban design. Cities thrive on complexity. Highways simplify. They remove friction, but also remove interaction. Interaction is the essence of urban life.
Density without presence. Why American cities can be full of people and still feel empty. Density is often misunderstood. It is treated as a number, people per square mile, units per acre, floor area ratios. But density is not what makes a city feel alive. Presence does. American cities are not low density in the way many imagine. They are often dense, but invisibly so. And invisible density produces silence. The difference between density and visibility. A city can contain millions of people and still feel empty if those people are not visible in shared space. Visibility depends on ground floor activity, pedestrian movement, overlapping uses, time spent outdoors. American cities frequently lack these conditions. People exist, but they are hidden behind walls, vehicles, and schedules. Vertical density without street life. Many American cities pursued vertical density. Office towers, apartment blocks, high-rise complexes. From a distance, these structures signal intensity. At ground level, they often offer nothing. Blank walls, controlled entrances, private lobbies. Life rises upward, but never spills outward. The street remains quiet. The privatization of daily life. American urban life moved indoors. Work indoors, entertainment indoors, exercise indoors, socializing indoors. Climate control, safety concerns, and convenience all contributed. Public space became optional. When life retreats indoors, cities lose visible energy. Why American streets feel transitional? In many cities, streets are not destinations. They are connectors. You walk only if necessary. You drive if possible. This transforms the street from a social environment into a logistical one. Logistics do not produce presence. The role of building design. Architecture reinforces invisibility. Setbacks pull buildings away from streets. Garages dominate facades. Retail frontage is minimized or removed. Buildings turn their backs on public space. When architecture disengages, people follow. Density that operates on a schedule. American density often peaks at specific hours. Morning commute, lunch rush, evening return. Outside these windows, activity collapses. This time-based density creates long periods of visual emptiness. The city pulses instead of flows. Office density and the empty evening. Office districts concentrate people during the day. At night, they empty almost completely. No residents, few services, little reason to stay. Downtown becomes quiet, not because it lacks people overall, but because it lacks permanence. Residential density without interaction. High-density housing does not guarantee social life. When units are isolated vertically and accessed privately, residents rarely interact outside. Shared courtyards disappear, front porches vanish, common spaces shrink. Density increases, but presence declines. The car as a density shield. Cars isolate individuals from the city. You move through dense areas without engaging them. Traffic congestion hides population rather than revealing it. From the sidewalk, cars look like objects, not people. Why sidewalks stay empty? Sidewalks require destinations. Zoning removed those destinations. Walking becomes exercise, not necessity. Without necessity, pedestrian volume declines. The cultural expectation of quiet. American culture often associates quiet with quality. Loud streets suggest disorder. Crowds suggest risk. Design responded accordingly. Cities were in city were to minimize visible crowding. This created environments that feel calm but also vacant. Density and surveillance. Private spaces offer control. Public spaces require trust. As cities privatized daily life, trust shifted inward. People chose environments they could manage. Public presence declined. The role of climate and comfort. Climate-controlled interiors reduce dependence on public space. Extreme heat, cold winters, humidity. Indoors becomes preferable. Urban life moves inside.
The city empties visually. Entertainment without streets. American entertainment rarely relies on streets. Cinemas, malls, arenas, all enclosed. Compare this to street-based cultures. Life here does not spill outward. The absence of micro-destinations. Small shops, corner cafes, local services. These create constant low-level activity. Zoning and parking eliminated them. Without micro-destinations, streets lose foot traffic. Why density feels different in other countries. In many global cities, density forces interaction. Living spaces are small. Public space compensates. In America, private space absorbs daily life. Public space becomes optional. Optional spaces empty easily. The scale mismatch problem. American blocks are large. Distances between intersections are long. Even dense areas feel stretched. Large scale reduces chance encounters. Chaff encounters create life. The role of safety perception. Perception matters more than counts.
Even safe areas can feel unsafe if empty. This creates a feedback loop. People avoid empty streets. Streets become emptier. Density without belonging. Presence requires ownership. People linger where they feel welcome. When cities prioritize movement over place, belonging fades. Without belonging, people pass through. The failure of numerical solutions. Adding units does not guarantee vitality. Without ground-level engagement, density remains abstract. Cities become tall, but quiet. Why this confuses urban policy? Planners measure density. Residents feel emptiness. The mismatch leads to frustration. Numbers improve. Experience does not. Density as an ecosystem, not a metric. Density works when systems align. Housing, commerce, transit, culture. Remove one and presence collapses. American cities removed several at once. The emotional consequence of invisible density. Invisible density produces alienation. You know others are nearby, but you never see them. This creates emotional distance. Cities feel lonely. Why this was accepted? Invisible density aligned with comfort. Privacy, control, predictability. The emotional cost was delayed. Now it is being noticed. The pandemic as revelation. When indoor life paused, cities emptied completely. This exposed how little public life existed to begin with. The emptiness was already there. Rethinking presence. Cities are beginning to reconsider. Ground floor activation, mixed-use return, human-scale design. The goal is not more density. It is more visibility. Comfort as a cultural blueprint. How American values quietly designed empty cities. To understand American cities, you cannot begin with buildings. You must begin with values. Cities are physical expressions of what a society prioritizes, what it protects, what it avoids. American cities feel empty not only because of planning decisions, but because those decisions reflected deeply held cultural ideas about comfort, safety, privacy, and control. Emptiness, in this context, was not an accident. It was reassurance. The cultural meaning of space. In many societies, proximity signals belonging. In American culture, distance often signals success. A larger home, a quieter street, a private yard. Space became a marker of achievement. Crowding, by contrast, was associated with poverty, disorder, loss of control. These associations shaped how Americans imagined good cities, not lively cities, comfortable ones. Privacy as a civic ideal. Privacy occupies a unique place in American identity. It is tied to freedom, autonomy, and dignity. Urban form adapted accordingly. Homes pulled away from streets, fences multiplied, porches disappeared. The line between public and private hardened. When privacy becomes sacred, public life becomes secondary. Safety perception and urban design. Safety is not just about crime statistics, it is about perception. Empty streets feel unsafe. Crowded streets can also feel unsafe. American planning responded by reducing unpredictability. Fewer people outside, clear sightlines, controlled environments. This produced spaces that felt orderly, but lacked spontaneous life. The suburban ideal as cultural anchor. Suburbans were not simply housing solutions, they were cultural statements. They promised separation from urban chaos, protection for family life, insulation from difference. The suburban ideal reshaped the meaning of the city itself. Urban life became something to escape from, not participate in. Comfort over intensity. Intensity creates energy. It also creates friction. American cities systematically reduced friction. Noise ordinances, setback requirements, single-use zoning. Each rule improved comfort. Together, they diluted vitality. Why quiet became normal.
Over time, expectations adjusted. A quiet street felt safe, an empty plaza felt clean, a silent downtown felt orderly. What once felt vacant came to feel normal. Cities recalibrated their emotional baseline. The fear of disorder. American urban history is shaped by fear of disorder. Riots, economic collapse, social unrest. Planning became defensive. Distance was used as a buffer. Buffers reduce conflict, but also reduce contact. The role of property values. Property value protection shaped cities profoundly. Unpredictable activity was seen as risk. Mixed use threatened stability, density threatened price. Zoning and separation preserved value. They also preserved emptiness. Homogeneity has comfort. Familiarity feels safe. American cities often prioritize uniformity. Consistent housing types, predictable retail, standardized streets. Uniform environments reduce anxiety, they also reduce interest. Interest draws people, without it space is empty. Why public space became performative. Public space shifted from daily life to special occasions, festivals, events, planned gatherings. Outside of these moments, spaces remain unused. Public life became scheduled, not organic. The mall as cultural clue. The American mall reveals much about urban values. Climate-controlled, private security, curated experience. It replaces the street. People gather, but not in public space. The city loses visible life. Individual freedom versus collective presence. American culture emphasizes individual freedom. Urban life requires compromise. Shared space demands negotiation. Rather than renegotiate, cities minimized shared space. Freedom was preserved, presence declined. Why spontaneity felt threatening. Spontaneity brings unpredictability. Unpredictability brings risk. Cities designed for comfort eliminate surprise. But surprise is what animates urban life. Without it, cities feel static. Time as a comfort variable. Comfort includes predictability of time. American cities operate on schedules. Rush hour, office hours, store hours. Life is compartmentalized. Outside scheduled time, space is empty. The quiet contract between city and residents. Cities promised, we will not overwhelm you, we will not intrude, we will not demand engagement. Residents accept emptiness in exchange for comfort. This contract defined American urbanism. The cost of emotional distance. Comfort creates emotional distance. People coexist without encountering one another. This weakens social fabric. The city feels hollow. Why this felt right for decades. Post-war prosperity reinforced comfort culture. Homes grew larger, cars multiplied, public life shrank. Cities adapted. Emptiness became invisible.
The generational shift. New generations question this trade-off. They seek walkability, vibrancy, shared experience. They are more tolerant of intensity. The cultural blueprint is shifting. Resistance to change. Comfort is hard to challenge. People fear losing safety and predictability. Urban change feels personal. The emptiness persists. The emotional geography of distance. Distance shapes emotion. Farther spaces feel less personal. Cities designed around distance feel impersonal. This is not failure. It is expression. Comfort as silent infrastructure. Comfort is built into street width, setbacks, parking, zoning. It is invisible but powerful. It shapes how cities feel more than style or era. Why American cities feel calm, not alive. Calm is not the absence of activity. It is the absence of friction. American cities optimized for calm. Life retreated quietly. The cultural paradox. Americans often crave lively cities, but resist the discomfort required to create them. This paradox defines urban debate today. Why emptiness was accepted? Because it felt safe. Because it felt controlled. Because it felt familiar. Emptiness became the background of comfort.
Efficiency over encounter. How American cities optimized movement and lost human friction. Every city makes choices. Some choose intensity. Some choose intimacy. Some choose efficiency. American cities chose efficiency. They optimized for speed, throughput, and predictability. And in doing so, they quietly removed the moments of friction that make cities feel alive. This is not a story of failure. It is a story of priorities. The logic of optimization. Efficiency promises clarity. Shorter travel times, reduced congestion, simpler systems. Urban planners measured success in flow. How many vehicles per hour? How quickly commuters moved? How smoothly goods traveled? People became variables in a system designed for motion. Movement became the goal. Historically, movement served place. You moved in order to arrive somewhere meaningful. In American cities, movement became the experience itself. Highways are celebrated. Commutes are normalized. Distance is accepted. The city became something you pass through. The decline of urban friction. Friction is inconvenient. It slows movement. It creates conflict. It demands negotiation. But friction also creates interaction. Street vendors, sidewalk conversations, unplanned stops. American cities systematically removed friction. Traffic engineering versus human behavior. Traffic engineering values predictability. Straight roads, clear signage, controlled intersections. Human behavior is messy. Cities adapted to machines, not people. The result is an environment that works, but does not engage. Why wide roads feel empty. Wide roads increase capacity. They also increase distance between people. Crossing becomes difficult. Lingering becomes unsafe. Streets become barriers rather than connectors. The cost of speed. Speed changes perception. Fast movement compresses experience. Buildings blur. Details disappear. People vanish. Cities designed for speed feel hollow at rest. The intersection as lost social space. Intersections were once meeting points, markets, announcements, gatherings. Traffic signals transformed intersections into conflict zones. People avoid them. Life retreats. The rise of the drive-through city. Drive-through culture reveals urban priorities. Food without contact, services without interaction. Cities adapted. Buildings oriented toward vehicles. Pedestrians became an afterthought. Efficiency and the loss of waiting. Waiting creates observation. Observation creates awareness. Efficient systems eliminate waiting. Without waiting, cities lose pauses. Without pauses, cities lose texture. Predictability as urban value. Predictable environments feel safe, but safety comes at the cost of surprise. Surprise animates cities. Without it, spaces feel static. Why public transit didn't save presence. Transit moves people efficiently, but often invisibly. Stations are isolated. Platforms are functional. Movement is internal. Transit users emerge at destinations, not along streets. Presence remains limited. The quiet removal of informality. Efficiency removes informal activity. Street vendors, buskers, pop-up commerce. Informality disrupts flow. Cities regulate it away. What remains feels empty. Metrics that miss the point. Cities measure travel time, congestion, economic output. They rarely measure street life, spontaneous interaction, belonging. What is not measured disappears. The spatial consequence of optimization. Optimized systems require separation, separate lanes, separate zones, separate times. Separation reduces encounter. Encounter creates life. The emotional effect of smooth systems. Smooth systems feel impersonal. People move efficiently but do not connect. The city becomes a service, not a place. Why efficiency feels rational. Efficiency delivers results. It reduces frustration. It supports growth. The emotional cost is subtle and delayed. By the time emptiness is noticed, it feels normal. The myth of neutral infrastructure. Efficiency is not neutral. It reflects values. Choosing speed over encounter is a cultural decision. American cities made that choice consistently. Why encounters matter. Encounters build trust. Trust builds belonging. Belonging sustains public life. Remove encounters and cities lose cohesion. The reappearance of friction. Some cities are reintroducing friction intentionally. Narrowed streets, shared spaces, pedestrian zones. These feel alive because they slow people down. Resistance to friction. Friction feels inefficient. Drivers resist it. Businesses fear it. Planners debate it. Efficiency remains powerful. Why emptiness is the visual outcome. Efficient systems remove reasons to stop. Without stopping, people disappear from view. Cities look empty. The scale of optimization. Optimizing at regional scale ignores local life. Highways serve regions. Cities serve people. When regional efficiency dominates, local presence declines.
The city as machine. American cities were treated as machines. Machines prioritize output. People become inputs. Machines do not create atmosphere. Why this still shapes cities. Even as cities evolve, efficiency logic persists. Traffic models dominate. Economic metrics rule. Presence remains secondary. Rethinking what cities are for. If cities exist to move people, efficiency wins. If cities exist to connect people, encounter matters. This debate defines the future of American urbanism.
Efficiency over encounter. How American cities optimized movement and lost human friction. Every city makes choices. Some choose intensity, some choose intimacy, some choose efficiency. American cities chose efficiency. They optimized for speed, throughput, and predictability, and in doing so, they quietly removed the moments of friction that make cities feel alive. This is not a story of failure. It is a story of priorities. The logic of optimization. Efficiency promises clarity, shorter travel times, reduced congestion, simpler systems.
Urban planners measured success in flow. How many vehicles per hour, how quickly commuters moved, how smoothly goods traveled. People became variables in a system designed for motion. Movement became the goal. Historically, movement served place. You moved in order to arrive somewhere meaningful. In American cities, movement became the experience itself. Highways are celebrated, commutes are normalized, distance is accepted. The city became something you pass through. The decline of urban friction. Friction is inconvenient. It slows movement. It creates conflict. It demands negotiation. But friction also creates interaction. Street vendors, sidewalk conversations, unplanned stops. American cities systematically removed friction. Traffic engineering versus human behavior. Traffic engineering values predictability, straight roads, clear signage, controlled intersections. Human behavior is messy. Cities adapted to machines, not people. The result is an environment that works but does not engage. Why wide roads feel empty? Wide roads increase capacity. They also increase distance between people. Crossing becomes difficult. Lingering becomes unsafe. Streets become barriers rather than connectors. The cost of speed. Speed changes perception. Fast movement compresses experience. Buildings blur. Details disappear. People vanish. Cities designed for speed feel hollow at rest. The intersection as lost social space. Intersections were once meeting points, markets, announcements, gatherings. Traffic signals transformed intersections into conflict zones. People avoid them. Life retreats. The rise of the drive-through city. Drive-through culture reveals urban priorities. Food without contact, services without interaction. Cities adapted. Buildings oriented toward vehicles. Pedestrians became an afterthought. Efficiency and the loss of waiting. Waiting creates observation. Observation creates awareness. Efficient systems eliminate waiting. Without waiting, cities lose pauses. Without pauses, cities lose texture. Predictability is urban value. Predictable environments feel safe, but safety comes at the cost of surprise. Surprise animates cities. Without it, spaces feel static. Why public transit didn't save presence? Transit moves people efficiently, but often invisibly. Stations are isolated. Platforms are functional. Movement is internal. Transit users emerge at destinations, not along streets. Presence remains limited. The quiet removal of informality. Efficiency removes informal activity. Street vendors, buskers, pop-up commerce. Informality disrupts flow. Cities regulate it away. What remains feels empty. Metrics that miss the point. Cities measure travel time, congestion, economic output. They rarely measure street life, spontaneous interaction, belonging. What is not measured disappears. The spatial consequence of optimization. Optimized systems require separation. Separate lanes, separate zones, separate times. Separation reduces encounter. Encounter creates life. The emotional effect of smooth systems. Smooth systems feel impersonal. People move efficiently but do not connect. The city becomes a service, not a place. Why efficiency feels rational? Efficiency delivers results. It reduces frustration. It supports growth. The emotional cost is subtle and delayed. By the time emptiness is noticed, it feels normal. The myth of neutral infrastructure. Efficiency is not neutral. It reflects values. Choosing speed over encounter is a cultural decision. American cities made that choice consistently. Why encounters matter? Encounters build trust. Trust builds belonging. Belonging sustains public life. Remove encounters and cities lose cohesion. The reappearance of friction. Some cities are reintroducing friction intentionally. Narrowed streets, shared spaces, pedestrian zones. These feel alive because they slow people down. Resistance to friction. Friction feels inefficient. Drivers resisted. Businesses fear it. Planners debated. Efficiency remains powerful. Why emptiness is the visual outcome. Efficient systems remove reasons to stop. Without stopping, people disappear from view. Cities look empty. The scale of optimization. Optimizing at regional scale ignores local life. Highways serve regions. Cities serve people. When regional efficiency dominates, local presence declines.
The city as machine. American cities were treated as machines. Machines prioritize output. People become inputs. Machines do not create atmosphere. Why this still shapes cities. Even as cities evolve, efficiency logic persists. Traffic models dominate. Economic metrics rule. Presence remains secondary. Rethinking what cities are for. If cities exist to move people, efficiency wins. If cities exist to connect people, encounter matters. This debate defines the future of American urbanism.
The city as machine. American cities were treated as machines. Machines prioritize output. People become inputs. Machines do not create atmosphere. Why this still shapes cities. Even as cities evolve, efficiency logic persists. Traffic models dominate. Economic metrics rule. Presence remains secondary. Rethinking what cities are for. If cities exist to move people, efficiency wins. If cities exist to connect people, encounter matters. This debate defines the future of American urbanism.
The city as machine. American cities were treated as machines. Machines prioritize output. People become inputs. Machines do not create atmosphere. Why this still shapes cities? Even as cities evolve, efficiency logic persists. Traffic models dominate. Economic metrics rule. Presence remains secondary. Rethinking what cities are for. If cities exist to move people, efficiency wins. If cities exist to connect people, encounter matters. This debate defines the future of American urbanism. The private life city. How American urban form shifted life indoors. At some point, American cities stopped hosting life. They began storing it. Life moved behind walls, behind fences, behind doors that close automatically. The city remained, but living quietly withdrew. When the city was the living room. Historically, cities were extensions of the home. Streets were social rooms. Porches were interfaces. Sidewalks were stages. Daily life spilled outward. In America, that spill gradually reversed. The rise of indoor comfort. Indoor comfort changed expectations. Air conditioning, central heating, private entertainment. The outside no longer needed to be pleasant. The inside became complete. Climate control as urban turning point. Climate control didn't just change buildings, it changed behavior. Why endure heat or cold when perfect temperature waits indoors? Cities lost seasonal rhythm. Suburbia and the interior ideal. Suburban homes prioritized interior life. Large kitchens, family rooms, private yards. Public space became optional. Life became curated. The decline of the porch. Porches once mediated public and private. They allowed presence without exposure. As houses turned inward, porches disappeared. The interface vanished. Garages as social barriers. Garages replaced front doors. Cars entered homes directly. Neighbors were bypassed. Arrival became invisible. The mall as controlled public space. Malls simulated urban life. Climate-controlled, privately regulated, predictable. They replaced streets without replacing spontaneity. Public life became conditional. Why streets emptied after 6 p.m.? If life is indoors, streets serve only transit. After movement stops, emptiness remains. Cities go dark, not because people are gone, but because they are hidden. The entertainment shift. Television, streaming, gaming, entertainment no longer required proximity. Community dissolved quietly. Fear and the retreat inside. Crime fears accelerated withdrawal. Perceived danger justified separation. Design responded with isolation. Safety became solitude. The architecture of privacy. Windows shrank, fences rose, landscaping blocked views. Visibility decreased, trust eroded. Public space became residual. Public space was no longer essential. It became leftover land between destinations, maintained minimally, experienced briefly. The economic logic of indoor life. Indoor consumption is measurable. Tickets, subscriptions, retail. Street life is hard to monetize. Cities follow revenue. Why parks didn't fix it? Parks are destinations, not connectors. They require intention. Cities need casual presence. Parks alone cannot replace streets. The loss of accidental encounters. Accidents create memory. Indoor life removes accidents. Interactions become scheduled. Surprise disappears. Digital life as urban substitute. Social media mimics presence, connection without proximity. But digital life leaves physical cities empty. The body stays home. Why density didn't restore life? Even dense areas can feel empty. Density without shared space is vertical isolation. Buildings track solitude. The cultural preference for control. Indoor environments are controllable. Temperature, noise, people. Cities are not. Control 1. The emotional consequence. Cities feel distant. People feel anonymous. Belonging weakens. Not dramatically, quietly. Why this felt like progress? Indoor life promised convenience. Convenience replaced engagement. Engagement was harder to measure, so it faded. The pandemic has an acceleration. Lockdowns normalized interior life. Cities emptied further. The shift became visible, but it had already begun decades earlier. Attempts to reclaim the outside. Outdoor dining, open streets, pop-up plazas. These efforts reveal demand, but habits resist change. The structural challenge. Urban form still prioritizes retreat. Zoning, parking, private space. Public life struggles to compete. Why emptiness became familiar. Generations grew up indoors. Empty streets feel normal. Presence feels unusual. The baseline shifted. The city as background. Cities became backgrounds. Places you live there, not in. Life had more.
Cities that still work and still feel empty. Meaning, consequence, and the future of American urban life. American cities did not collapse. They function. Infrastructure works,
Markets operate, homes are occupied. And yet many of them feel empty. This is the paradox at the center of modern American urbanism. Emptiness is not failure. It is important to say this clearly. Empty-feeling cities are not broken cities. They are successful at what they were designed to do. They move people efficiently. They protect private life. They scale economically. What they struggle to do is something harder to quantify. They struggle to host life in public. What emptiness actually means. Emptiness does not mean absence of people. It means absence of visibility. People are present, in cars, in buildings, behind screens. They are simply not encountering one another. The city becomes a system of parallel lives. The long chain of cause and effect. This emptiness was not caused by one decision. It emerged from a chain. Abundant land, automobiles, zoning separation, infrastructure efficiency, private comfort, indoor life. Each step made sense. Together, they changed everything. Why this felt rational at every stage. At each moment, American cities made reasonable choices. Cars promised freedom. Highways promised growth. Suburbs promised safety. Efficiency promised order. None of these goals were wrong, but they all prioritized individual optimization over collective presence. The cultural core of the issue. American culture values autonomy, space, privacy, choice. Urban form reflected those values faithfully. Cities did not fail culture. They obeyed it. Why European comparisons miss the point. European cities feel different not because they are better. They are older, denser by necessity, built before cars. American cities were born in abundance. Abundance allows separation. Separation changes experience. The role of scale. American cities operate at regional scale. Commutes stretch miles. Services centralize. Systems optimize for distance. Human interaction works best at neighborhood scale. The mismatch creates emptiness. Why density alone is not the answer. Adding buildings does not add life. Without mixed use, walkability, informal space, density becomes vertical solitude. Life stacks instead of spilling. The forgotten value of friction. Friction slows us. Slowing allows eye contact, improvisation, memory. American cities removed friction deliberately. What they removed was not just inconvenience, but texture. Why public space feels fragile. Public space requires participation. It only works when people choose it. In a culture optimized for private life, public life becomes optional. Optional spaces are always vulnerable. The economic reality. Private consumption is profitable. Public presence is not. Cities follow incentives. Street life competes with streaming services, climate control, and convenience. It is an unfair competition. The psychological shift. Generations have grown up without active streets. Emptiness feels normal. Crowds feel unusual. Urban expectations changed quietly. Attempts at revival. Cities are trying. Complete streets. Outdoor dining. Walkable districts. These efforts succeed locally, but struggle systemically. The underlying structure remains unchanged. The question cities are now facing. Not, how do we move people faster? But, why should people be present at all? This is a philosophical question, not a technical one. Cities as more than systems. A city can be efficient and still feel lifeless. A city can be imperfect and still feel alive. Life is not optimized. It emerges. The risk of doing nothing. If emptiness is accepted as normal, cities become background infrastructure. Places you pass through. Places you sleep in. Places that do not remember you. That is not collapse. It is quiet erosion. The opportunity ahead. American cities are not doomed. They are unfinished. Their emptiness is not a verdict, but a signal. A signal that something essential is missing. Reframing success. What if success included presence, encounter, shared time? What if slowing down was not inefficiency, but investment? The future will be selective. Not all cities will change. Some will double down on efficiency. Others will experiment with presence. The difference will be visible. You'll feel it immediately. Final reflection.
American cities feel empty not because they lack people, but because they were designed to protect people from one another. They work, they scale, they succeed. But life happens in the spaces between efficiency. And those spaces, for now, remain the rarest resource of all.
Closing thought. A city does not need more buildings to feel alive. It needs reasons to pause. It needs permission to linger. It needs places where nothing productive happens, and people still choose to be there. That is the work ahead. American cities don't feel empty by accident. They feel empty by design. And that raises an uncomfortable question. If emptiness created comfort, what happens when cities try to feel alive again? Should American cities change, or is space itself part of the national identity? There's no right answer, but the debate is worth having. Share your perspective below. What makes a city feel alive to you? What we've covered in this video is just one piece of a much larger system. In the next video, we'll explore how another hidden decision shaped American cities even further. If you've noticed these patterns where you live, share your experience in the comments. And if you want to understand why American cities look the way they do, the next episode is waiting.